Hi, I'm Jenny Brown. Welcome to this week's MFB news. I hope you are all keeping incredibly well. There is a lot of lurgy going around at the moment, isn't there? I've had it actually my son's had it as well. So a little bit under the weather, so apologies if I sound croaky. I hope if you've had it, you're doing okay, and if you haven't had it, keep it up. You don't want it, it's not very nice. Now, for those who are eagle-eyed amongst you, you will notice that, or you won't necessarily notice, but we're sending this video out on a Wednesday. Normally we do it on a Friday, so I'm recording this on a Wednesday rather than a Friday. So the first thing to say is that the weather has turned absolutely Arctic. It is freezing this morning. So I hope you've all got your long johns and woolies ready to put on to keep you nice and warm. Now, the second thing is that because we've only recorded the previous video on Friday, you will find that actually we haven't got a huge amount of London news for you this week. So this felt like the perfect opportunity to introduce something that I've been wanting to share with you for the last couple of weeks, which is the journey that I'm currently going on of repossessing my buy-to-let property. Now, I think it's fair to say that nobody wants to have to do this. I certainly didn't want to have to do it, and I hope that none of you have to go through this experience yourself. But actually, I thought it would be really interesting while I'm on this journey to share it with you, talk about the steps that I'm having to go through, the measures, so that if this happens to you, you're prepared for it, and also you understand what to expect. So we're going to be kind of running an almost diary of this over the coming weeks, and unfortunately, I think it's actually going to be months as well, just to kind of let you know what's happening. But this week, I'm just going to sort of give you the background as to what's happened and the first steps that I've gone through and the paperwork that I've had to have ready, just to kind of let you know how that all works. Okay, so first up, lender news. There have been a couple of changes since last Friday. We've seen West One introduce some limited edition products, and their 5-year fixed rates are now starting from 5.55 and 2 years from 5.66. Now, West One are a specialist lender, so we're looking at limited company lending, or also to individuals as well. No maximum number of properties in the background, no minimum income requirement. They do multi-units, HMOs. West One are actually, one of the things I think they're really good at is slightly more unusual property types, and they proactively kind of position themselves as such. So by this, I mean things like flats over commercial, things that are in close proximity to commercial, ex-local authority, high-rise, those kinds of properties which are classed as the kind of, not second tier, that's not fair, but the kind of second layer of property outside of the kind of most desirable. So really, really great news to see West One introduce some limited edition rates there. We've also had an announcement from Vida Home Loans that they're repricing. So they're actually putting their rates today, Wednesday, repricing tomorrow. They haven't told us what the new rates are going to be, so they're going to be going down. That's the thing I can tell you, but I don't know how much by. We've also had a similar announcement from Capital Home Loans, who they too have announced they're putting their rates but haven't actually announced the repricing, but again, it's a downward move. So what I would say is that with these three lenders who've just talked about, so West One, Vida and Capital Home Loans, these guys haven't made any large rate reductions since the mini budget spike. So this isn't like further reductions, this is like the first round of reductions. So great to see these guys keeping on with that. Now, the other lender who we've seen make some reductions on rates also, which have been announced, is Keystone Property Finance. Keystone are a wonderful lender actually. Now, their fixed rates on standard properties, 5 years, are now from 6.09, multi-units from HMOs from 6.29%. Now, these might sound markedly more expensive than, for example, West One. There's a very good reason for that. Keystone are a really specialist lender. So when you deal with Keystone, you are literally dealing all the way through from start to finish with a point of agreement in principle, all the way through to completion with a really, really experienced underwriter. So these guys really do look to kind of carve out deals. So an example of something you would use Keystone for is something where there's a slightly more complicated share structure. For example, if there's some light historic adverse in the background which has got good justification, they're really, really good at incorporation deals. We recently did an incorporation deal with Keystone for 45 properties, and they really, really got their heads around it. They were able to work really closely with the solicitors. The client had a really good experience. So loads of great stuff there. So great news to hear about Keystone's reprice. Again, I think this is more of an interim reprice than the end result, but obviously the guys are keen to sort of stay in the market and bring something to the table for the time being. In other news, we've had BM Solutions make an announcement, which actually we've seen quite a few lenders do recently, which is that they are moving forward the date at which you can apply for your product transfers. So at the moment, traditionally most lenders will say you can contact us for product transfer, 90 days before your existing rate ends. 90 days is kind of the standard, and there are some variations on this. Some lenders might say 120 days or 3 calendar months, but it's generally around that mark. And what we're seeing at the moment is a bit of a trend where lenders are actually saying, nope, you can come to us and book a rate up to 6 months in advance of your product ending, which is really, really nice. Now, actually at the moment, in terms of where interest rates are going to go, so we think interest rates are going to come down. I mean, we're very confident interest rates are going to come down. And by this, I'm talking about fixed rates, not base rate, which is going to go up in December. But actually at the moment, if you've got a Birmingham mid-size product, which is coming to an end in 6 months' time, I wouldn't necessarily be rushing in to book a rate now. I actually think if you hold off for a few more weeks, possibly a month, you'll find that pricing will have eased down a bit further. But great that they're looking to try and do something flexible, which ultimately will benefit the borrowers. Now, the other thing that we've seen this week is the Mortgage Works have made some amendments to their what they call their stress rate, the rental calculation they're using. So essentially what they have done is amended downwards the rate at which they're stressing the mortgage payments. So we know, because we've covered this off many times now, the rental calculation that lenders use to determine if a mortgage is affordable would look like 145% coverage, assuming an interest rate of 6.5% as an example. So it's the 6.5% bit that the Mortgage Works have dropped down. So I won't go into too much details because actually it's very, very complex. I have a matrix which, depending on whether you're taking a 5-year fixed rate or not, whether it's a limited company, personal, what tax bracket you fall into if it's personal, and if it's a like-for-like remortgage, the calculations are all different, but the sentiment is there they've actually made things slightly more affordable. And where we're struggling actually at the moment with rental calculations, I think that's probably the toughest thing that we're trying to navigate, actually to see a lender bring something down is really, really fantastic. Okay, so at Mortgages for Business, obviously we're a big fan of buy-to-let, and I do genuinely believe it's a wonderful thing to be involved in. However, there is some slightly less pleasant sides of being a landlord, and for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I am a landlord. I have 2 buy-to-let properties. One is a property which I deliberately acquired in a limited company. The other one is a house that I used to live in before I moved into my current house, so I rented that house out as well. Now this house I own in my personal name, and I've been really, really lucky actually. I've been renting it out for about 5 or 6 years now, and I have been really fortunate with the tenants. But sadly, the people who are currently renting from me have not been paying their rent, essentially. And unfortunately, because they won't communicate with the estate agents, this is all managed by an estate agent, I hasten to add, because they've refused to communicate with the estate agent and they haven't been paying their rent, we've been forced to call upon a guarantor that they provided when they moved in. So fast forward a few months, these tenants still haven't been communicating. The guarantor has been dutifully paying their rent, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But the guarantor has said, look, I can't afford to continue paying this rent, so I need you to serve notice on the tenants, which I actually thought was really reasonable. You know, at the end of the day, it's not the guarantor's fault if these people aren't, you know, able to make good on their commitments. So I dutifully, under the advice of my agent, served a Section 21 notice where I gave the tenants 2 months' notice to vacate the property. Go forward 2 months. The tenant contacted the estate agent and said, actually, we're waiting for housing from the council. At the moment, we haven't got anywhere to go. We're on a list, so we're not moving out. So that's kind of where we got to there. So I now have no guarantor paying rent. I have no tenant paying rent. I'm covering the mortgage payment and all the other costs that go with running a buy-to-let property. And I have no kind of end date as to when my tenants are going to get housing from the local authority. So what I've been advised to do by a solicitor is now take them to court to get them evicted. It's not something that sits terribly comfortably with me, I have to say, but what I've been advised, whether this is right or wrong, and by all means leave comments on this, what I've been advised is that actually until the tenants are evicted, the council aren't going to exactly rush to house them because they're still technically housed. There are other people whose situations will be far more pressing, far more urgent. So you kind of almost have to make people homeless for the council to then pick things up and run with it, which I find incredible. Anyway, but I'm not going to offer too many opinions on this. So I've got a solicitor involved. They have said that essentially I've served a Section 21, the tenant has not surrendered the tenancy, so the next step is issuing court proceedings to gain a possession order. So what does this actually mean? So basically my solicitor is now going to put together a bunch of information to put together a file to put in front of a judge to request possession of my property. So I can't request possession of the property or gain possession. It has to be done via a judge. So what I've had to do is fill out quite a long form to give to my solicitor, and I've had to provide some paperwork. And this is a thing that I think is quite important for those of you who privately rent your properties. It's probably worth knowing about because, well, I'm not the most organised person with paperwork. I am for my clients, I hasten to add, but when it comes to my own, I'm a bit disorganised. So I was really glad that the agent had all this information to hand. If I'd been in charge of this, I'd still be hunting around for it now. So I had to provide a copy of the AST, I've had to provide a copy of the notice being served, I've had to provide a copy of my EPC, my gas certificate, my deposit certificate as well. I've also had to provide confirmation that the How to Rent guide was issued and the date that that happened. I've had to provide proof of ID and address, and I've had to provide a copy of the title register to prove that the property is actually mine. Now, here's something that was interesting for me. So the solicitor said, you know, you can try and get your own copy of the title register, or we can do it for you for 40 quid. So Mortgages for Business, we can do title searches, no problem. So I logged on dutifully, pulled off this copy of the title search, sent it over to the solicitor. And actually, incidentally, it says on it, it's not admissible in courts, we can't use that. So I then went onto the Land Registry website and tried to do things a different way, the way that the solicitor suggests. It involves printing off an application form and filling it out by hand, posting it back, and paying my £10 fee for a copy of the title by cheque. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have a chequebook anymore, so I have no way of paying for this, which I find absolutely incredible. It just shows really, I guess, how kind of archaic some of the systems involved in the kind of conveyancing or legal property process still are. So the upshot of that was I've had to bite the bullet and pay the solicitor 40 quid to get hold of a copy for me. So where we are now is that I have paid my solicitor £1,200, which I'm hopefully is going to be the kind of sum of all my legal fees. So I'm now waiting for them to put all this information together, review that they're happy with it, and advise of next steps. I'm being told that this could take up to 3 months to actually be sort of heard by a judge and get my possession order so I can kind of get things moving properly. So essentially I'm now in a position where I'm faced with that I'm already sort of £1,200 plus out of pocket. I've also got rent that I haven't been paid, and I'm looking at another potentially 3 months of not receiving any rent. So not the most happy experience, particularly with it being Christmas and there's a cost of living crisis and all that kind of stuff. But I thought that might be useful. So I think really the advice that I've learned from this so far is actually make sure that you are across all of your paperwork. Do keep things stored in a really, really organised manner, and make sure you have things correctly kind of documented. The other thing I would say is that if I didn't have any landlord's insurance, so I insured the building, but I didn't take any of the insurance that would have covered me for this. Hindsight's great, isn't it? So actually what I've been advised is that if I had have had insurance, then that would have put me back in funds for all the rents that I've lost and covered my court fees as well. So just something to consider if you don't have that kind of insurance already, might be worth thinking about. So that's where we are at the moment. I'll keep you posted. I suspect I won't have any large amounts of news for quite a few weeks, but actually if I do have anything further to add, I will keep you posted. But I hope, you know, at least you found that interesting and maybe helpful as well. And on that happy note, that's all of MFB News this week. Thank you, as always, for investing your time to watch this. I hope you did find it helpful. And as always, if you have any questions, do give us a call, 0345 345 6788. I'm not actually here next week, so there is no video next week at all, but I'll be back again the following week as we run up to Christmas. So for now, please do keep warm, look after yourselves, enjoy your festive activities, and I will see you in a couple of weeks' time.